feature presentation.
Welcome back to another Untitled Movie Podcast. I am one of your hosts, Matt Rohrbeck, alongside, he's allergic to tomatoes, but he is Tomato Meter approved, Eric Marchin.
Matt, how are you?
I'm good, man. How about you?
Oh, we're getting into the end of November, which it feels like we're basically in 2025 at this point.
I know. It's the older we get, the faster time moves, the closer we are to death.
Sure are
great
every
way to
year.
So yeah, it's always, I'm like, it's November 20th as we're recording this. Where I'm already, I mean, you'll see what we're talking about today, but I'm already kind of talking about, things people can do in 2025, which sounds like it's not a real thing, 2025, but
I know.
here we are, man. What's new with you? This is fun because we're doing a series of regular episodes, which we've been, we've been doing more review focused and festival focused stuff. So we're kind of getting back to our roots here a little bit while still doing something kind of new for us, where we're doing more, conversational kind of regular episodes where we're not necessarily reviewing a film, but we're going to be kind of doing this little mini travel series about places people should maybe travel to if they're a film fan. Some will be more obvious, like what we're talking about today, and then we'll get into kind of some more different places as we do kind of maybe 3 or 4 episodes kind of in this style, but they'll be kind of more of like our old conversational. Maybe they'll go too long, who knows, but I'm excited to kind of do something a little bit different with you. But how are you, man? How you holding up? You're getting ready to vote for Critics' Choice, so you're kind of cramming in all those movies. What's new?
I'm cramming, Matt. I'm also decided to become juror number 2. I've got a film festival that I'm doing some work for that'll be announced pretty soon, I think, in terms of my participation. And then I also have been doing some interviews. So, if you stay tuned to this site in the next month or so, you'll get to see some interviews for Better Man with Robbie Williams and director Michael Gracie. But then also for September 5 with Tim Followbaum. So there's a lot of stuff in the pipeline, as they say, that will be coming up before the end of the year. And then we also just in general, in terms of like, we still have A Complete Unknown and Moana 2 and Nosferatu, not a 2 in Nosferatu, all coming up in terms of reviews here. So, even though it's the end of the year, things are starting to wind down in terms of new releases. We will still be reviewing stuff. You're going to catch up with Gladiator 2 and Wicked. God, it's so depressing when everything is a sequel.
I mean, yes and no. I mean, I love like I was thinking about this the other day because I just recently watched the first Gladiator and Wizard of Oz, and I know there's been many sequels to Wizard of Oz and things like that, or prequels. I don't know. I get what you're saying with that. What I do love about everything being part of a franchise or sequel is it
Or
makes me go
IP.
back, or IP. And I mean, today we're going to be talking about Disney World, which is all IP. So, I love it because it gets me to go back and watch those movies that I haven't watched in a really long time. So even if the sequels don't pan out or something like that, like it made me go back and watch Gladiator again for the first time in probably 20 years. It made me go back and watch Wizard of Oz for the first time in maybe, 25 years or something like that. So that I am thankful for. And I think sometimes it can be great to go back to these different worlds and universes and things like that. I know we'll get more into what you thought about those movies when we review them after I see them. And same with even Moana too, like keeping on the Disney train here, or the Disney
Bandwagon.
monorail.
Okay.
Yeah,
Good
there you
point.
go. I am excited to go back and rewatch Moana because even though that hasn't been that long, I don't know, it just makes me I struggle watching stuff at home a lot and figuring out what to watch. So I like having a kind of structure. So when new movies are coming out that are sequels, I do go back and rewatch the originals to but I do get what you're saying. A little bit more original stuff would be wonderful too. So,
Yeah, it's just nice to like
um,
start new IP or something that
yeah.
is like, new and can then be exploited for years to come. It feels like,
But hey,
Gladiator
Moana
2,
was
Moana
new
2, all it's like
at the time.
222, or it's a, live action quote unquote remake of something
Yeah.
like Mufasa. It's which again, quote unquote, on the live action part of things, but it's just nice when you get something that maybe feels original, or like this year, at the end of the year, we are basically only getting Nosferatu and A Complete Unknown, and that's about it. And neither one of those are original either. They have solid directors. I'm not necessarily the biggest fan of James Mangold as a whole, but I think he is a competent filmmaker. And so, like, it's just usually like there's something at the end of the year that you're most excited about. And I guess we've already seen that, which is The Brutalist.
Yeah. I mean, we were talking, it's a bit of a weird year, I think. Like it there is some great stuff because I went back and looked at my letterboxed top 15 or whatever. But once you get down to the 10 to 15 level for me, it's like those movies, I'm like, being on this list, maybe you're teetering a little bit. But there are 10 or so movies I really, really loved this year still. Brutalist obviously being that one that you're mentioning. Challengers is amazing. Things like that. So, and I even actually watched the new David Lowery short that's on Disney Plus right now. That's an almost Christmas story, which is something recent that I really loved. If you're in that kind of Christmas mood, but I think we're still seeing that fallout from the strike, from COVID. Even still, I think that perfect storm of both of those things has kind of, as expected, left a little bit of a lull this year. Like it, it feels like there's less not even coming out, but like, I don't know, there wasn't a lot to get super excited for in the fall and into the winter. And I know there's some things that played TIFF, like Baby Girl, another one, the A24 movie, stuff like that that's coming out on Christmas Day. Um, but yeah, it's been a little bit of a weird year. And I think you can even kind of see that with us doing, different kinds of content, like a travel series that we're going to do that is movie related. And I've always wanted to do kind of stuff like this that, um, I love movies, and that translates to other things like video games and theme parks to kind of segue into what we're going to talk about today. And like, I think video games based on movies, and why I really, this travel series that I wanted to do and pitch to you a little bit back is, I love kind of the escapism of movies. Then that can be applied to going to something like a theme park. And that's kind of, I've always tried to explain to people, I'm a 35-year-old man. Theme parks can kind of be viewed as places for children or teenagers and things like that. And I always try to explain, Disney adults kind of get a bad rap and things like that. And I'm always about, if you're not hurting anyone, like just let people enjoy what they want to enjoy. And I think escapism can be a good thing in small doses. You still have to have the reality of reality. But why I love theme parks and things like that is I love the production and how you can adapt a film into a ride or kind of build a whole land based off of an IP or something like that, and bring you into these worlds and these movies that you love. And that's kind of why I love theme parks. And even more lately, I've gotten more into trying to explore different ones and go and want to travel around. And I love traveling with my wife, Nevis, and we love going to beautiful cities and exploring those. And then on top of that, I like to kind of also explore little pockets of theme parks. And one of my, bucket list things now is to kind of travel around and see as many of them as possible. So, yeah, I love kind of the engineering of it and the production of it all, and how, comparing it to something like Eric, obviously me and you living in the Toronto area, we're very familiar with Canada's Wonderland, right?
Yes.
And as I've gotten older, I'm not a huge fan of that park because it lost the Paramount branding. It used to be Paramount's Canada's Wonderland, where they had rides like Top Gun and Tomb Raider, and they were all based off. It was more like a Universal or a Disney park. We've lost that, and I found myself, there are certain parks that I want to go to, like Europa Park in Europe, which is more Epcot if you want to compare it to a Disney park where it's more traveling around the world in one place. Um, but what I really love is these IP based theme parks and bringing yourself into those worlds. So it's something I've wanted to talk about for a while, and I really do love Disney parks and Universal parks and things like that. And I've wanted to talk about it for a while because I really do think, and there are other places outside of theme parks that I think are really fun for movie fans. You can go on tours of locations that places, go to Hawaii and visit where Jurassic Park was filmed, or Lost, or you can go to the Sopranos bar in Aruba, where Eric went to. So we're gonna, over the next kind of probably until the end of the year, do these kind of episodes throughout the rest of the year. So if you're planning on going on a trip in 2025 and you're a big movie fan, and not, of course, about Disney World, of course, about Universal Studios. So those things aren't necessarily going to be new to you. But what I hope to
But
bring
do
is
you know about Cullen Gardens and Miniature
Miniature
Village?
Village here in Whippy.
I don't think it's
Which
even open anymore.
I don't know. I think it did close down. It was lit back in the day though,
Oh
where you
yeah.
go for the little Christmas village or the Halloween kind of theme stuff. I have a great photo of me as Tuxedo Mask, with my cousins who are all
You threw a rose
Sailor
and
Men.
ran away.
Yeah, and
Like he does in
so,
every
and I
episode.
was like embarrassed to be Tuxedo Mask, so I kept telling the other people that would say, "Oh my god, you're Tuxedo Mask." I go, "No, I'm the Phantom of the Opera." Like that was better. So,
I mean, not
um,
not wrong. I mean,
yeah.
Tuxedo Mask again
It's
throws
the
a
same
rose
thing.
and runs
Yeah.
away in
It's
every
no, it's
episode.
obviously that. So anyways, you'll probably obviously know about Disney World, know about Universal, but what I hope to bring to some of this is my experience going, and I get really hardcore into the planning and giving, like, trying to figure out the best way of doing things, and some tips and things from my, like, I've had experience talking to my uncle or something who went, and he's like, it was a disaster. I didn't get on the rides. The wait time, and I think people go, "Oh my god, it's so busy," or you have to wait in all these lines and things like that. And I think there's a way to do it where, um, you can kind of avoid those things. And yes, there are ways you can pay to not avoid those things, but I think you can go, and even as someone who, I hate crowds. I get really anxious in crowds. I don't like being shoulder to shoulder with people. So what I hope is to kind of tell you maybe what times to go, how to kind of avoid that. And really the crowds aren't as bad as you think. Maybe if you go on a Thanksgiving holiday in the US or over Christmas or one of those times, it's going to be absolutely wild. But if you're smart about it, and as Canadians going down there, you can go at the right times, and kind of avoid some of those lines if you're smart about, how you kind of do everything. So, anyways, I wanted to kind of, we're going to start with a episode on Disney World today. So I recently went to Walt Disney World, in Orlando with, my sister and my wife. It's our second Disney trip in probably 12 months. So I want to talk about that trip that we just took, some kind of tips, what our favorite rides were, kind of the experience of going. We also went to Mickey's Not So Scary Halloween Party. So it was kind of a separate event you had to get a ticket to that is at the park later at night, where it's all Halloween themed stuff. So that was a lot of fun. So I'll talk about that as well. And then to preface this before we start, thank you to Disney. They did give us tickets, to Disney World. So I want to just say that off the top, because you can go, it's not a sponsored episode, anything like that. I just always like to be transparent that I did get these tickets for free. So, you can take my opinion with a grain of salt, but I will always be honest in everything, that I talk about. But Eric, I'm going to toss it over to you because you didn't come with me.
No, I did
To the
not come
Disney
with you,
trip.
Matt.
But you've gone to Disney parks before. You've gone to Disneyland in California, correct?
I
And
have, yes, but I went
yeah,
at the
yeah,
worst possible time
yeah,
because it felt like everything was under construction. The Haunted Mansion,
yeah.
it was during the Martin Luther King Jr. Holiday weekend.
Probably
because
pretty busy then.
yeah,
Yeah.
it coincided with the Critics' Choice Awards, and so the year that I went, yeah, it felt like everything was under construction or being refurbished, and there wasn't really a lot of rides or anything that was kind of more engaging in terms of roller coasters. You know, the things that Martin Scorsese talks about when he compares Marvel movies to theme park rides. There wasn't really a lot of that available. It was more so just walking around and looking at some of the exhibits and gift shops and things like that. And so, you know, with that in mind, I found it a little bit underwhelming in terms of like what I was excited about versus what it ultimately was. Not that it was bad or anything like that, but it just felt like, oh, maybe in my mind I had more of a kind of a anticipation for what I was expecting, something greater, and I was kind of let down by it, just a tad,
Yeah,
you know.
I get that. I mean, Disneyland, very different park than Disney World. Smaller, much smaller, and then
It's a small
exactly what you're
world after
saying.
all, you know.
Yeah, and then there's California Adventure and Disneyland. Did you go to both or just Disneyland?
Just Disneyland.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so then that would be a much smaller experience, especially if a couple rides are closed. And Disney, all parks right now, I think, are in this transition phase where they're competing with one another. So Disney has been building new lands or renovating rides, changing rides a lot. So there has been a lot of construction in the parks. It's such a different beast, Disneyland and Disney World too. Like I love both parks, but I definitely understand where you're coming from. And
Well, there's
then,
Star Wars stuff as well. Like that was when they
mhm,
were starting to build their
yeah.
Star Wars section,
Yeah.
and it
So that
was
would have been a huge part that was,
yeah, like you
kinda
could still visit some of it because it was open to the public, but it
yeah,
was also under construction. So you'd be walking through, and you would basically be seeing like Tomorrowland, but then you would see like the Star Wars stuff, and like even there they had like a video that kind of gave you a recap of all of Star Wars, and you could sit in their
yeah.
theater and watch it. But it just kind of felt like, oh, this is at the very beginning of them putting this
So this
together,
was a
and so
little
it's a
while ago for you.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
it was a little janky at that point.
Totally. But all that stuff is built now. So I like Galaxy's Edge and, is fully open at both parks now. Um, which is kind of I've been both to LA and Orlando, and they're pretty identical for the most part. But loved it. But yeah, I'll get into my trips. I went with my family 2 years ago now. So in actually no, it was last year. So like we went this year and last year. So February of 2023, and then I went in August of 2024. And the reason
D23.
Hey, and then, the reason I went back with, Nevis and my sister, was because a couple new rides opened, so that's kinda what I wanna focus on, and I'll go through kind of I went on that first trip with my family, we did, like, a tier ranking of all of our Disney rides, so I'll kinda go through that at one point. But this trip we did a little differently, where we had a 2-day park pass, which had Park Hopper, which means you can hop to any of the Disney parks. If you go to Disney World, it is its own city. It is insane how big it is, with all the different resorts, all the different kind of parks. You have Animal Kingdom, Magic Kingdom, Epcot, and Hollywood Studios, and they're all pretty far away from each other. If you're going to go, I always like it's expensive, but I do like to stay on the resort because you get to stay in this kind of Disney bubble. There's free transportation throughout all the parks and things like that. So this last trip we went to, we decided we were going to stay at a little bit nicer of a hotel because when I went with my family in 2023, we stayed at one of the value hotels. Which was Pop Century, which kind of has a motel vibe and has basically why it's called Pop Century is because you have themed on different decades, basically, and it's a little bit more low budget, a little bit more motel style, but still really great. All the rooms are very renovated, but this time going with my sister and Nevis, we were going 2 days at the parks and 2 days of kind of relaxing and not going to the parks. The first time I went with my parents, we did like 5 days back to back to back to back. Basically went to actually I think it was 7 days like at the parks every single day from open till close. So I think there's different ways you can kind of approach Disney World of being whether you're a park person and you're there all day and you want to go on every single ride, or the resorts are really nice too, where you could take these days and kind of relax. So this last trip, we stayed at a resort called Coronado Springs, which is kind of Spain themed, Mexican themed too, like kind of Spanish themed and stuff like that. Um, and I'll start there by going. I enjoyed the resort. It was beautiful. What I will say is that I don't know if I would stay there again. And what I mean by that is what I realized, and even Pop Century being a value and this being kind of a moderate resort, which is objectively nicer in air quotes, but it felt why we did it is because it felt more adult in the sense of it was less kind of Disney theming and more just kind of subtle. But when we were there, what I realized is that why I go to Disney is because I want the big, colorful, corny theming and everything, right? I'm not necessarily going for a subtle kind of more adult experience. So when we stayed at Coronado Springs, the pool was great. It had a big pyramid. It was very, very elaborate in its theming when it comes to the pool area. But what I realized is that um, it felt like a really nice luxury hotel, that people would go to anywhere, right? And I think when I go to Disney, I want the giant, Mickey Mouse statue or the giant yo-yo that's at Pop Century, or just kind of the like things that some people could think are corny, but the reason why I go there is because I want it big and in my face and just kind of silly.
You want to
Um,
embrace the gimmick of it.
Yes, and I think that's what it is, and that's how you'll get to enjoy these places is just embrace it. Let out your inner child, just kinda do that. So I get the appeal for some people who maybe like it, but want one benefit as adults, there were less kids at this resort, right? So, and I don't mind obviously, it's a theme park for everyone, and I think and it is focused very much on kids, and I think one thing I love about Disney, I don't have kids, but I love seeing the families that are there, whether it's they come all the time or it's a once in a lifetime trip. Like I really do think that bubble and that escapism and there's so much going on in the world right now that and all the time that just where you can go and you just see these families having a wonderful time. It's wonderful, but I understand as adults sometimes you don't always want kids around, whether it's screaming, crying, things like that. So it is a good option if you're really because it's I think less themed, so less kids stay there, less families stay there. Your dogs are agreeing with me.
Yep.
And then uh, so I'll start there where I don't know if I would go back and stay at Coronado Springs. That's my main thing over there. I think we also did a resort hopping kind of day where we tried to explore all the different kind of resorts. There's a resort called Riviera Resort that we really, really loved, which was kind of like European Mediterranean kind of themed. Nevis obviously having that background was great, but the food there was wonderful. We hopped around to some of the super luxury resorts, like the Grand Floridian and the Polynesian Resort and things like that. And what I really loved is like everything is so heavily themed and so perfect when you go to them that whether it's from the food to weirdly the smells in the lobby and things like that, like it was really fun. I highly suggest if you're there just a resort hop because you might be staying at kind of a cheaper resort or and you can kind of check out some of the where the rich people stay things like that. So
It's like
and
the
I
bridal path in Oakville
yeah, sure, yeah.
places
You
like that
can't
in
afford it, but you
Ontario.
can go explore it,
Yeah.
right? And you can go eat at their food courts, and you might not be able to stay in their room, but or you can dream one day that okay, next trip maybe we'll save up and stay at a little bit of a nicer
I
resort,
like
right?
that
But
as like a tagline. Can't afford it? Explore it.
yeah, exactly. And that's actually perfect. So, without even going to the parks, there's so much to do, whether it's exploring these different resorts or going to Disney Springs, which is their shopping district and things like that. So we did all that. There was a drone show that they just introduced at Disney Springs that was really interesting, which it seems like Disney's experimenting more with because they're doing at their Paris park a lot. I think some of the European and international parks are doing less fireworks, and fireworks are a very American thing. So there, I think you'll never really see the drone shows take over the fireworks. I think in Florida, unless they kind of, I mean, not in this next era. Uh, um, are no fireworks aren't getting banned or anything like that for sure, but
Definitely not.
no. So, but they are doing these more drone shows, which are really, really, really cool and way better for the environment and probably cost a lot less too. So, um, it was cool to kind of see that. So there is a ton of stuff to do when you're not even at the park. So, yeah, I just think with Coronado Springs, probably cool for some people, but I was kind of like enjoyed my time there. um I just think I'd like to go stay somewhere with a bit more theming. And even the Riviera Resort, which I was mentioning, which is more on the subtle side, it's still like inside the hotel they played like French versions of Disney songs, right? And even that stuff is enough theming to be like, all right, that's kind of the kind of cheesy stuff that I want when I when I'm there. Um so going into the actual trip and going to the parks, the main reason why we wanted to go back is because Disney just, even in that year from 2023 to 2024, they opened two new rides and a new experience at Epcot that we didn't get to see when we were there in 2023. So the main reason we came back is because we wanted to go on Tron Light Cycle Run, and we also wanted to go on Tiana's Bayou Adventure, which is the skin of Splash Mountain. So they Splash Mountain being, not a great history, being based on Song of the South, and probably it the right time to kind of, okay, let's maybe get rid of this and give a a underrated, I think, Disney film its flowers at a Disney park with Princess and the Frog. So we went for those two rides, and they also, speaking of Moana 2 coming out in the next week, they had a Moana kind of walk through water experience at Epcot. So it wasn't necessarily a ride, but basically you walk through and they teach you about water. I guess that doesn't sound that exciting, but it's really beautifully done, and all Moana
Bobby
themed.
Boucher's
And
favorite.
exactly. Uh Disney Prince Bobby Boucher. And you can interact with the water and control it with your hands. It was very, very cool. So that was kind of the main thing. And then also we went back to go do some of our favorites from previous trips, like Guardians of the Galaxy Cosmic Rewind, which is the Guardians of the Galaxy roller coaster at Epcot, as well as Rise of the Resistance, which is the main Star Wars attraction at Galaxy's Edge. And obviously, Eric, I know you're a
An
huge
edge lord?
Avatar,
Oh,
a huge Avatar fan. So the whole Pandora area is really cool too. So basically, we did two parks per day. So we hopped around because we only had those 2 days, but we had park hoppers. So we wanted to make sure we could get everything in, as well as that Halloween party. So um, you know what? I'll start. And Eric, interject at any point if you have any
oh, I have
questions or
been.
things like
Edge
this.
lords,
Yeah.
Bobby Boucher.
Yeah. The perfect
Classics.
yeah, stuff. I'll start with the Halloween party actually because it's a singular kind of thing. Um we went to Mickey's Not So Scary Halloween Party, which I mentioned earlier is a separate ticket from your park days. So it takes place after hours. They close Magic Kingdom early, around 6 p.m. I think they close it. You can enter the park at 4 p.m. if you have a ticket. And it's the only time at Disney where you can dress up fully in costume as long as you don't have a mask. On most days, because of the characters, walking around and different things like that. They don't let people dress up in costume unless you're a kid. So it's this kind of it's not adult focus because it's not after hours because it's from like 6 until midnight. But you can walk around the park. They give you a bag and you can go kind of trick or treating, and it's all sponsored by like Mars candy, and you get like gigantic bags of candy, like a disgusting amount of candy, because you can go to all these locations, as well as they have like kind of special shows and events that only happen at these Halloween parties. So um one thing about Disney, like, I embrace it all and I try to go, you know what, just like I said earlier, like just be a kid again, kind of the cornier the better. It just embrace the fun. Don't kind of judge anyone. Just kind of go in. The one thing I don't do as a 35-year-old man is like meet the characters. It's like the one thing that people will line up forever to kind of meet XYZ. And I get the appeal of it when it comes to, it's almost like a checklist. Like you get your photo with these characters that don't, appear that often, right? So at this Halloween event, I think there's like a Jack Skellington
Hell yeah.
photo that you can go get, and the lineup's always really
I
long
got
because
that in
it's this
Aruba.
really, yeah, did you? Yeah, yeah, I saw that. And then there's the like specific Halloween costumes that some of the characters wear and things like that. So I get that appeal. Then there are performances. So the Dapper Dans, which are that kind of the group that what's the singing without what am I talking about? Dapper Dans are singing without instrument, like what I mean, without a backing track. They all sing together.
Oh,
What's the
like
name of it?
acapella?
A cappella group. So that
Yeah.
sings usually like classic Disney songs. So they're the Cadaver Dance during Halloween,
Like
and they
where in the
have
world
kind
is
of,
Carmen Sandiego, right?
yes,
Like that.
thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So they're Cadaver Dans, so they're kind of all like dressed up looking like they're dead, and they sing kind of more, they sing the Haunted Mansion song and all these kind of things, and they'll go through the park and do that. There was a pirate band that played outside of Pirates of the Caribbean, or Caribbean, which shout out to Nevis, because my wife, I love her enthusiasm for everything. Like she just loves to love things, and that's what I love about her. And there are certain things where, even my sister and I can be like, do we need to go see the pirate band? And Nevis is like, I want to go see the pirate band. And we're like, that doesn't sound great. Like, I don't know if I need to go do that. So she's like, can we please just go do it? And we're like, well, we wanted to try to ride Tron at night, even though we'd already done it already. And we're like, all right, we'll go see this pirate band. So we go down, and it was one of the best things the whole night. Like, it was so much fun. It was just obviously this local, probably Floridian band of these old guys that look like pirates, but then, or maybe they are a pirate themed band that they found. I don't know, or whether they were all just hired by Disney separately, but um, it was so great. Like, they played just like, classic music, but then also some Pirates of the Caribbean songs and things like that. And it was
All
just
Hans
such a,
Zimmer all the time.
yeah, it was just such a fun vibe, and we sat and watched, or not sat, like stood and watched their whole performance, and it was so great. And that's something that only happens at the Halloween party. And then they do a special Halloween fireworks show, which was very cool. Special projections on the castle, as well as a hocus pocus style villains kind of show. And my sister, so again, everyone who goes to Disney, I think there's like different kind of things you enjoy, right? You might be a ride person, you might be a resort person, and then there are all the shows, right? You might be a character person, or you might be like a show person. So my sister, very much coming from like a theater background and stuff like that, is very much a show person, or she really likes the shows. So we watched this Hocus Pocus show, which was really kind of fun, with all the Disney villains and stuff like that, at the end of the night, which was really, really cool. And then there's a special Halloween parade. So I really, it's a cool event. It's pricey. It was like $150 American each, right? The benefit there is you're getting all this exclusive stuff. And also it's so much less busy than because it's like you have to pay, it's an extra event kind of thing. There's much less people in the park. They limit the capacity, and all the rides are still open, right? So if you don't really care about some of the Halloween specific shows, you can just ride rides, and all of the ride lineups are much shorter than what they would be during the day. So, and rides like Tiana's Bayou Adventure and Tron, at that time, they were what they call virtual queues. So basically, instead of having to line up, you basically put yourself in a digital queue through the Disney app, and then they tell you when to come back, and then you get to go on the ride. During the Halloween party, you could just line up for the rides. You didn't have to go in that virtual queue. So with the virtual queues, you might wake up at 7 a.m. on a normal day and try to get in it, and you don't get in the virtual queue, and then you just don't get to go on that ride that day. So the Halloween party, and they have a Christmas party that they do, and each holiday they kind of have a
Arbor
separate,
Day party.
yeah, exactly. That you can kind of go through and do these after hours events, which have a much shorter line. So we got to ride Tiana's Bayou Adventure during that at night, which was very cool. That was the second time we'd go on that. I'll talk about those rides in a second, but yeah, the Halloween party was cool. It's one of those things that I don't know if I do again, but doing it once I think is worth it. I know it's slightly different than the LA one, where the LA one I think has more themed areas, like you know how Universal does the horror nights kind of thing, where
Yeah.
they have like a Last of Us house, and the weekend like is scary, and like
The
things
Book
like
of
that.
Henry
Yeah,
room.
exactly. Yeah, yeah. Where I think in LA they have like, there's an Oogie Boogie room and like a thing where they're characters and it's more themed and like walkthrough kind of things, where this didn't necessarily have that kind of stuff. It was more just like the park was open and there was exclusive kind of shows and stuff. So yeah, I don't know if I'd do it again, but it was fun to do once, especially like depending on how often you go to Disney and things like that. If it's a once in a lifetime trip and you're there during one of these events, it's definitely, I think, worthwhile. It's just I don't know if it really depends. If you're already going to the parks a bunch of days and you're there for a whole week, like, and you don't necessarily need those lower wait times, or you don't care about some of the Halloween shows, because it was very much show heavy, right? Like, if you wanted to see all those exclusive kind of things, then do the Halloween event. But that was something we actually paid for with our own money. Um, and yeah, I enjoyed it, but I don't know if I would do it again. I would probably just do normal
I
park
know I
days.
know a way that you would do it again. Next year, meet the characters. Jared Leto's lead character from Tron, the new Tron
Tron.
movie.
I mean, great segue, Eric. So, I mean, the other days,
Wasn't
we
intentional.
I know, but like, I mean, Tron likes Light Cycle Run was one of the main reasons we went, right? So when we were there in 2023, they were just opening it. So it was doing like cast previews when we were there the first time. So we missed it by like a week. So I really wanted to go back and ride that. That was a ride that they already had opened in Asia at one of the Asian parks. So it was kind of plucked out of that park and put into Tomorrowland. Um, so we did go to Magic Kingdom, Magic Kingdom had both Tron, like Light Cycle Run, and Tiana. So two of the newest rides were both in that. I mean, it's still Splash Mountain, but I'll get into that. So Tron was one of the first things we did. We got a virtual queue for it in the morning at Magic Kingdom. So this is one of the regular days we went. I'd highly suggest. So they have these things called Lightning Lane, which, if you remember going to Disney in the past, or if you heard, you used to get a fast pass, and that's gone in through many iterations. And there's a lot of criticism when it comes to their skip the line kind of access stuff, right? Universal does it in a way where you pay one fee, it's pricey, but you get to go on every ride at least once and skip the line. Disney in the past had fast pass, where you would go around and get a free fast pass. It was free, and it would tell you just come back at this time and you get to go in a separate lane and go on the ride.
Vin
That
Diesel's
then
favorite.
that
Fast Pass and Lane.
that then transitioned to like a paid version of Fast Pass. Or no, a free version where you only could limit yourself at 3, and it would all be through the app. And then that transitioned into a paid thing called Lightning Lane, where you would buy a Lightning Lane pass for the entire day. And you could book the fast passes or the lightning lanes throughout the day, but you could only hold one at a time, and things like that. Then they've changed it again, so you could hold 3 at a time. And now they've added another new thing after this wasn't even available when we were there, where you can do like an ultimate pass kind of thing, where it's like the universal version, where you pay an obscene amount of money and you just get to go on every ride and skip the lines.
And that's something that like your Uncle Mark might appreciate, just because you don't have to do as much planning, or maybe have to be there
I
so early or ahead of time in
Yeah.
order to, actually
Yes,
potentially
but it
get a
can be
spot.
very complicated. I think one of the criticisms about all of this stuff is like, when it's very expensive to go to Disney, right? And I understand that. I'm very privileged that Disney gave us free passes, or I'm very privileged that I'm able to afford to go. Not everyone can. And then on top of that, um, it's getting more and more expensive. And then on top of that, they're like, you need an engineering degree to figure out how to plan everything, right? Because there's so much and all this tech, right? And not a lot of people are techie. I'm very lucky that I understand this stuff very easily. I can help my family do it. I love planning this kind of stuff. I love figuring it out, finding the best way to do it, the hacks of what to book, what to do first. And there's so many resources that are probably better than this podcast that you guys can check out on YouTube. And we watched a ton of stuff leading up. There's a lot of good YouTubers and people that will give you great information on planning your Disney trip and how to do Lightning Lane best. My sister loves allears.net, which is on YouTube. I like a YouTuber called Paging Mr. Morrow, great, super positive dude. I liked Disney Food Blog and like all these different places that are really great resources for this kind of stuff. But uh, yeah, you don't have to get this stuff. It does help, right? The lightning lane thing, especially if you're going during a busier time, but it's all like surge pricing kind of thing where, slower days, it's going to be cheaper, busier days, it's going to be more expensive. So yeah, you can either get the lightning lane multi-pass, which lets you book those 3 lightning lanes before your trip to each park that you book it for, and you can do that up to like a week ahead, depending if you're staying on resort, or 3 or 4 days ahead if you're not. And then there are, tons of resources online of which rides you should try to get first, and things like that. And then they have lightning lane single passes, which is for rides like Tron, Tiana's is a normal lightning lane. Guardians of the Galaxy, Rise of the Resistance, you can just buy a single one for that. So you can pay like $15 and just go on that ride because they're like the busiest, most popular
What
rides.
about the Cure for
And
Wellness lane? Like, what lane is that? What
yeah,
pass is that?
I mean, I would love, like, Disney used to have an alien encounter ride that it, at that time, they originally wanted it to be the Xenomorph, but they didn't own the rights to the Xenomorph at that
Oh,
point.
now
But
they
then,
do.
I know, believe me, Eric, this is my dream, because I remember that ride terrifying me as a kid. And it was just kind of like a generic alien ride, but it was like this scientist, there was a tube in the middle and an alien breaks out of the tube. It all goes black and you feel it like breathing. It was like one of the scariest rides at Disney, right? Like, because Disney's mostly kid friendly rides. There's some roller coasters and different things like that are probably a little bit too much for kids. But that ride specifically, I remember terrifying me as a kid. Then they rebranded it to a Stitch thing. So, like, the same kind of idea, but it was Stitch. So it was a little bit less scary and more goofy, right? And then they just shut it down completely. And I'm like, my dream is that they reopen that thing and actually go back to the original idea where it's a xenomorph. But I don't know, unless Disney opens like a separate park that is more kind of adult focused with some of their, 20th Century Fox kind
And
of branded
Searchlight
stuff,
stuff and
which would be really fun, I
a
think, as
Banshees of
someone.
Inisherin section.
Banshees of Inisherin bar. Come on, let's go.
I mean, yeah,
Um,
why not?
Stuff like that, right? And you can tell that they're doing a little bit more of that with the Star Wars stuff and the Avatar, which are kind of more older kids and adult kind of themed stuff. So anyways, I forget where I was going with this, but so we did a virtual lane for Tron. We also did the lightning lane multi-pass for um Magic Kingdom that day. So we decided, and when you get it for one park, you can pay for the one that gets you for all the parks too. So if you hop over to a different park, you can still use the lightning lanes over there. And then it's called the Lightning Lane Premier Pass is what I'm talking about, which is that ultimate version where it's like hundreds of dollars, but you get to go on every ride and skip the line. So Disney's very good at, hey, if you have the money, I mean, good in a kind of, you know what I mean, of like the more money you have, the easier your experience is going to be. But then
Sounds
I
like life.
also, yeah, exactly. So you can't really, like, I don't know. It is what it is, really.
I mean, it's a nice
And you're already
escape, right? Like, that's
yes,
the
and you're
thing.
already spending so much going there. So I always tell people, I'm like, it does feel like a lot of money, but if you're already spending a lot of money, I don't necessarily, I'm not suggesting the Premier Pass because I haven't used it. I have no idea. I'm sure it's great because you get to walk on every single ride. Um, Are we getting a Amber Alert
Yeah,
thing? Oh, Jesus.
they're doing a test right now. It's just a
Great.
test.
Great. And now my everything disconnected and my phone fell down.
I wonder
So
how maintenance works at Disney World. I wonder if they have to constantly update things, or like what time do they fix things up?
what do you mean, like the rides and stuff like that?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, I mean, after hours they probably have people working all night and things like that, right? I don't know exactly, but that's one of the things I do appreciate. I know, um, I think the quality, kind of control of everything, like everything feels like it's 110, 120%. And I think because you're paying such a premium that you kind of have to uphold those standards because like you are charging a lot for people to go,
yeah.
right? So then my suggestion to people is like, you're already spending a lot. Like I know something might, you know, there's complaints that they're gouging for everything for things that used to be free, right? Like, so I definitely understand the criticisms there where you're like, you used to give this as a free service. And like, I think people compare the Disney cruises and the Disney parks in an interesting way because on the Disney cruise, I've heard people like our friend Andrew Powell, who does a lot of travel content. Check out his stuff at the gate. He's really great at this stuff. Um, he talks about how on the cruises, you're paying a premium, but you get that premium thing where all your food's included. You get all these fancy dinners, you get all this stuff. Where when you go to the parks, you're paying such a crazy amount of money, but then you also have to pay for all the little things, right? Like people go, some of that stuff should be included because I'm already paying you a premium to go to your park, right? Like that should be, it was worth the amount of money because you weren't at every corner trying to get a little bit more out of me, right? So I definitely understand that criticism. And then I'm on the other side going like, I to keep I don't know, like it's such a tricky thing. Like I wish fast passes were still free. I think that is something that should be included in the price of admission, especially just in a smart way of trying to um, shuffle people around the park, right? Because if you're scheduling people to go to different rides, you can kind of do crowd control, right? And then that keeps your lineup times down. And because you're letting everyone kind of schedule when they're going to rides, it could help ride times go down. Or you do what the universal method is where yeah, you can pay to go on every ride faster, or you just go on every ride, and then that way it eases the lineups too, because then you don't have these like 3 tiers of where they have to let in the super paid people first, then they have to do the medium paid people, and then the people who don't pay anything are waiting much longer because you kind of have to shuffle all 3 lines together. So
It sounds like
there,
Patreon in a way where you have
it
like
is,
those
man.
tiers, right? Where it's like,
It is.
oh,
It's
you
like
can be a top donor and have all of this access. But what you were talking before and what you were mentioning with Andrew, where there's a feeling of, if you're paying like for like a resort, for example, or if you're going to a hotel, like, there's the all access kind of it all, like
all
when you
inclusive kind of
yeah.
thing. Yeah. And that's on a cruise, that's what you get. It's there are premium things you have to pay for on a cruise. Booze isn't included a lot of the times. There are certain restaurants that are a premium, right? But those are few and like a lot smaller where at the Disney resorts and at the parks, everything's very expensive and they upcharge on a lot of stuff. So you don't have to do it. What I do suggest if you're going on a busier time is the Lightning Lane multi-pass is worth it at certain parks. I think at Magic Kingdom, especially because there's a lot of rides at Magic Kingdom. Hollywood Studios would be a number two, and then Epcot and Animal Kingdom, not so much, depending on what you want to do. Right, there are some great rides there, but the best rides are the single lane ones, or not the single lane, the single lightning lanes, or you are virtual queues. And with the virtual queues, you don't have to pay anything; you just go in and get your virtual queue kind of time. So, anyways, that was long winded about the lightning lane things, but there's a lot of history there. There's a great documentary about lightning lanes and fast passes that is on
Cars.
YouTube. Yeah.
Lightning Lane
um,
McQueen.
uh, Fast Pass documentary YouTube. Um, on Defunct Land. It's an hour and 43 minutes. This guy made a documentary on Disney's Fast Pass. It's called Disney's Fast Pass: A Complicated History. It's awesome. So if you're interested in the history there and why they've changed it so many times and what the reasoning behind it and all this kind of stuff. Yes, it's about 3 years old, so it doesn't have any of this lightning lane kind of additions, but it's a really great indie documentary on YouTube that you guys can watch there. So, anyways, we did get the Fast Pass multi pass, and the one thing I will say is I'm glad that they brought back this. You can book them a week ahead because they took that away for a while, where you had to book them like the morning of at 7 a.m. And that was always a pain in the ass. So it is nice where if you're staying on a resort, you can go in a week early, book your 3 most important rides that you want to go on. So say you want to go on, whatever rides, the top tier ones that you want to go on, you can book those and know you're going to get a fast pass or a lightning lane for those rides. So we go to Magic Kingdom the first day. We did a Magic Kingdom, I think Epcot split the first day. So we ended up being able to do Tiana's Bayou Adventure, which was closed for most of the day, but did open up for us because it's whenever they open a new ride, there's a lot of kind of ride shutdowns and things like that because technical issues and things like that. But we got to go on Tron right away, which had already been open for a while, so it was running pretty smoothly. And your good Jared Leto segue for the new Tron movie coming out next year. I'm excited for that 9 Inch Nails score, though, to be honest. And I like Tron Legacy, so
like the score, Daft Punk.
Yeah, the Daft Punk score is awesome, and I am excited to go back and rewatch that before this new one.
And Morbius.
Yeah, of course.
And so listen to 30 Seconds of Mars. Actually, I'm surprised that, or maybe Jared Leto tried to get like 30 Seconds of Mars to do the score for Tron. Yeah. Arius, I believe it's called.
Eris, yeah.
Eris. Arius, the the antihistamine.
So we Tron Light Cycle Run is a roller coaster in Magic Kingdom right by Space Mountain. It's kind of its own separate area at the back. Why it's cool, it's kind of you're riding one of the like Tron light cycles. So you kind of sit on it like a motorcycle, you lean forward. So you're kind of like hunched over this motorcycle type thing, and the kind of the harness comes up on your back and your legs kind of thing, and which is kind of a really unique kind of cool way to ride a roller coaster. And what I had heard about this ride beforehand was that it was like extremely short. So I went in with kind of like tempered expectations of it. I like the Tron theming and stuff like that. I wanted to go on it at night because at night the whole thing lights up. It looks really, really cool. So the outdoor segments look a lot better than during the day, in my opinion. But we went on it like one of the first things that we did. And I was pleasantly surprised. It was really cool. Like the way that you ride the ride, it was short, but longer than I expected because people told me it was so short. The outdoor segment is very, very short. And the rest of it is indoors. So you have all that kind of Tron, neon blue, neon orange kind of thing, and you're racing the other light cycles and stuff like that, and it's over very quickly. But while you're inside, and I've realized with a lot of these indoor coasters that Disney have, they're all kind of Space Mountain coded a little bit, right, where it's dark inside, there's some cool lighting. And I'll talk about the Guardians of the Galaxy coaster in a little bit, which is very similar as well. So pleasantly surprised by Tron Light Cycle. I think they just opened it up. They took out the virtual queue, so it's a normal lineup now, I believe, but at our time it was still virtual queue. But I think it's cool that they're putting rides in for stuff like Tron, which uh did okay, but I don't know if it's like one of their biggest IPs, and they're trying to do it again with Eris coming out next year. But I was really kind of pleasantly surprised with that ride. I thought it was very, very cool. And then with Tiana's Bayou Adventure, Space Mountain, Splash Mountain is a classic. I love Splash Mountain. Um, I do understand the problematic nature of its origins and things like that. Well, none of that was really necessarily like in the ride. I think it was basically just because of where it came from, it little dated, a little bit, in need of a change. So I think Princess and the Frog, like I mentioned earlier, is a super underrated kind of Disney princess movie. And I think it being the last kind of hand drawn animated movie, I'm pretty nostalgic for that. And I do think it's really genuinely great. So the theming on that, it's a long ride. It's a water ride, so it's not going to be for everyone. You don't get soaked, but it does have that
You do get wet though.
you do. And that big drop that it has is more thrilling than you almost because some Disney rides, can be just very chill and for kids and stuff like that. But they do have the odd thrill ride and Space Mountain, Guardians, this all kind of have those elements. So I love the combination of a dark ride with a thrill ride. And a dark ride, if people aren't familiar, are those kind of like slow moving kind of, you're in the thing and it's more about the animatronics and the different kind of areas you go through. There's no necessarily like thrills. You're just kind of indoors and immersed in a universe, and it's plays off the animatronics and the storytelling of it. So what I love is when you blend that with thrilling elements. Pirates of the Caribbean has that a little bit, and things like that. So Splash Mountain very much is that, where the majority of the ride is a dark ride, and you're going through this. It takes place after Princess and the Frog, after Princess and the Frog, and before the new Tiana series that's coming out on Disney Plus. Um, so you don't get any Dr. Facilier, you don't get any villain elements. It's just kind
So
of a
no Keith
nice.
David.
No Keith David, no. Which
Nice.
that's the one thing I will say I was disappointed in, is that I would have liked a really cool Dr. Facilier element and animatronic, and you don't get any of that. It I guess they thought you don't need that in this ride, but it's really beautiful. It's like you going down the bayou, the lighting and the animatronics. Like these newer Disney rides, I think are so impressive because the animatronics are wild, like just wildly impressive and expressive, and the music is incredible, and it's like a pretty long ride. I think it's between 7 or 10 minutes, and you just kind of chill, go through down the bayou. You see all the kind of characters from Princess and the Frog. You get these new critters that they've created for the ride that are all playing in this band. Shout out to the otter. I always been a huge fan of otters since I was a kid, so uh, it was my favorite element, seeing that animatronic of that character. And then the drop is still a blast. So and then the final kind of sequence after the drop, it was kind of mesmerizing. So I was really, really impressed, and became one of my kind of favorite kind of things I've done at Disney. And I think they always kind of outdo themselves with these new things. And I think a lot of people are upset because you're taking away some of the history, right? Like these parks have been around for 40 to 60 years, depending on Disneyland versus Disney World. And, when you remove these rides that have been there close to the beginning of when they opened, I get that sadness of losing some of the original kind of stuff. But I think embracing, the new things are is really great too. And I think they do a really good job at kind of taking what made Splash Mountain great, and adapting that to I think a really great Disney movie that I think deserved its own part of the parks. So
And does the mechanics of the ride actually change all that much in terms of just like what it is with like what it ultimately becomes? Because basically what it still sounds like, other than the dark ride part of it, is a log ride, right? Like that's
yep.
kind of what it
And
is.
it's Splash Mountain still, right? Like
Yeah.
they didn't change the track or anything.
It's just rebranding, you
It's
know?
rebranded, and I think it's just a smart way of doing it, but it does feel like a completely different ride. You're still going through the same track and things like that, but the whole uh going down the bayou and all the different new animatronics and new elements, I think do really make it fresh. But it is essentially still the same Splash Mountain that you either loved or whatever. But just with a completely different theming, like, and I think a smarter theming and a better theming in my opinion.
Yeah.
So, I thought it was great. So those were the two new rides, and then the Moana experience at Epcot. Like I mentioned earlier, just kind of a cute infotainment kind of thing, where edutainment they call it too, where you're learning about why water is important, things like that. So I always appreciate, and Epcot is great for that kind of stuff. Like, I think as you get older, like when I was younger, I always thought Epcot was kind of boring, right? Because you're like, oh, it's just countries, and it's, you're learning about different cultures and shit. It's not like the normal Disney kind of
It's a geography class.
yeah. And as you get older, it's the one park where people love to go drink and eat, and they are really trying to put more rides in there, where before it was really ride light. Where now their biggest things, they have a great Frozen ride, which is there, which is in the Norway Pavilion, which is actually a great another log ride, but a more dark ride log ride, and
Dark ride,
um,
log ride.
dark ride log ride. And then in Epcot, Test Track was closed when we were there because they're rebranding it again. Test Track is always, we have a soft spot because it's always branded by General Motors or Chevrolet, and my dad worked at General Motors for 35 years. So here's another hot tip for people: if you have a family member who either works at GM or is retired from GM, as long as they have their GM like employee badge, there is a special like secret Epcot area that you can go to if you're a
Ooh.
GM employee. So we were very lucky when I went with my parents. Both times I've gone with my dad, he always feels very like proud and cool that he gets us into this area. You can go to this, if you go to Test Track, there's an area on the right hand side that it's like a side door you go into, and it looks like you're going into like an office, not building, but it's like beside Test Track. You open that up, you walk to the back, there's an elevator, and it's all kind of GM branded, and you hit like the doorbell thing and someone talks to you, and you go up, and there's this lounge area for GM employees, and you have to be a GM employee to go there. So you give them your badge, and you can bring your whole family, and there's free drinks, like free soda. At that time you could like customize your Test Track car and stuff like that, but then you get this great view of Epcot that only people who are GM employees can kind of go up and see. And it's the one place in the park you can kind of escape to because it's pretty busy everywhere. So um it's always fun. So if you know anyone who's a GM employee, or if you are a GM employee or something like that, you can go to this kind of it's probably closed right now until Test Track opens up again because it's under refurbishment right now. But yeah, my family loves Epcot now. So like as a kid we all were like, Epcot, but like I think as you get older, Nevis
You
loves
were
it because of,
originally an Ep snot, and now you are
yeah,
an
yeah.
Epcot.
And so going around to all the different countries, the German restaurant we always love because it has this like this live show of this band who plays as you're having like a German buffet. It's really, really fun. All the drinks are really good. They always have festivals at Epcot. So uh we went, not this past time, there wasn't a festival. They were the wine food and wine festival was going to start the day we left. But the first time we went was Festival of the Arts, or Farts. Um, so we got to see the Festival of the Arts, where they have all these different kind of booths where they have different food from different cultures that you can kind of buy, or drinks and things like that. So pricey again for like little small bites of food, but um, you can again find videos online where people suggest the best things to kind of try, because I think if you're just going off of no information, you can go up to a booth and buy something, and you go, oh, this is really small, or it's not really worth it, or something like that. So try to do a little bit of research before, but always fun.
Did they
Uh,
do
the,
anything for Oktoberfest, or is that before you
I think
showed
they
up?
do at the German pavilion, but in August when we went, I don't know if they had anything. We didn't go eat at the German um, pavilion this time. I love Regal Eagle Barbecue in Epcot, which is based off of the eagle from the Muppets. What's his name?
Sam the Eagle.
Sam the Eagle. Like, so I any Muppet stuff, which there's not much Muppet stuff at Disney anymore, and there's rumors that they might get rid of the whole Muppet Vision area, which I hope not, because it's the only Muppet thing really left. Regal Eagle and is the Sam the Eagle uh, barbecue restaurant in the American Pavilion at
Seems out of
Epcot.
character
So
for Sam the Eagle.
um,
He seems a little too stern to have that kind of punny title.
yeah. So, it's good though, and there used to be kind of a hack we would do. My other hack about Disney is if you're going, especially if you're Canadian and used to like Canadian portions of food, I will say American portions of food, and Eric, you know this by traveling there, can
Yeah.
sometimes be massive, right? So what we found, even as a 35-year-old man, I don't necessarily need to eat that much. You could either share a meal with your significant other or your family members. Or what we would do if you order in the app, we would just order kids meals all the time. So, because the kids meals were like normal sized portions of food. And depending on where you're going, you can get a pretty good kids meal. And at Regal Eagle, you could get like barbecue food with like two sides and a drink. And it was like $9 American. It was amazing.
And that is the
And
kids' meal.
that's the kids meal, and the size was decent, the price was decent, and we would do that over and over again, ordering kids meals. So, that's a little bit of hack and no one questions. They just think you're either buying it for a kid
Or who cares?
or who cares really if you just want less food,
I
right?
mean, you're
So,
still paying, what its cost is.
yeah,
It's,
totally. But last time we were there, they took away the kids meals at Regal Eagle that we got before. So I don't know if they were like on to people, like, because you could get like ribs or
Sam
chicken,
laid down the law.
yeah. So Sam yeah, would no longer let adults order the kids meals, or the kids meals was only like mac and cheese now or something like that, where
Mac and
or
me?
maybe they didn't sell as much, I don't know, because like kids weren't getting like baked beans and like and
That
stuff like
probably has
that, but
something to do with it, right? Because
um
it's not like that. Baked beans is not a kids friendly
no,
side.
and maybe a lot of the barbecue style meals actual kids weren't ordering, so maybe they just removed it from the menu, but that was one of our hacks in Epcot as well. Um, Guardians of the Galaxy. So I actually like how they did the theming for Guardians. It's one of the only Marvel rides in Orlando because in Orlando at Universal has the whole Marvel they have the rights to all the Marvel theme park stuff because that deal was made before Disney bought Marvel. So Disney in Orlando can only use certain characters at their park that they didn't license to Universal. So Guardians being one of those. So, and that's why most of the Marvel stuff is in LA because they're allowed to use more characters there. The Guardians of the Galaxy Cosmic Rewind coaster is incredible. Um, it's my family's favorite ride at Disney. It's one of my favorite theme park rides of all time. As a Marvel fan, as a theme park fan, as a roller coaster kind of fan. As I get older, I like less intense roller coasters and more kind of creative roller coasters. And so I don't necessarily like the very intense tons of loops spinning roller coasters. I like something that has a little bit more, and not saying that those aren't creative, but some more theming dark ride elements.
You
So the
don't like being
Guardians,
swung side to side, or like something like Leviathan where it's all about the extreme.
yes, and I think less extreme and more kind of innovative. So, Guardians, I love the theming of like they have a pavilion at Epcot. Like so when you're going through it's very Epcot kind of coded, but then if like what's the planet in Guardians of the Galaxy where the Nova Corps is from? Um that gets destroyed, what we didn't necessarily see.
With John
I'm
C.
blanking
Riley and Glenn
everyone. Yeah,
Close.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, that I'm blanking, guys. I'm a huge Marvel fan, but I can't remember. Xandar. So it's basically like a Xandar pavilion as you're going through the lineup, which I think the lineups at Disney, the one thing they're really good at now too is making, you do have to wait in a lot of lines, and that's part of it. You have to kind of like embrace that, play games with your family, just talk, like spend
Ugh,
like while you're in
gross.
rides. I know, right? But I actually do, and then they do a really good job at the theming in a lot of the lineups to make them kind of entertaining as you're going through. So the Guardians line is very, looks like an Epcot pavilion kind of thing, but for Xandar, right? And that's basically the whole thing, is that they're basically have this
It's
pavilion at
my favorite
Epcot.
strip club in
Um,
Toronto, Xandar.
so what I think is
Zanzibar.
cool about the ride, stop. Um, and then the ride is very, Terry Crews plays a character that kind of introduces the whole ride to you. They use some of the celestials from not Inhumans. What am I the Chloe Zhao movie,
Oh, the Eternals.
Eternals. So they use some of these celestials from the Eternals as kind of the villains in the ride. Rocket plays a big part, and you kind of go through the wormholes and travel through time. Is essentially, that's why it's called Cosmic Rewind. So you're basically put into a ship and sent out into space to kind of help the Guardians of the Galaxy with this celestial kind of invasion thing, because they steal something.
And you're
And
still the one, growing out of Earth that hasn't been
that,
addressed.
well, which we will get in Captain America soon. But in this, it's a live celestial. But very cool. There's like 5 different songs you can get during the ride, because a lot of the Guardian stuff is music focused. So you never know what song you're gonna get as the coaster starts. And it's one of the best roller coasters I've ever been on, where the first time we rode it, I was just elated. It was so much fun. Um uh Basically, what it is the coaster kind of can swivel kind of almost in 360, but then also it's like Space Mountain on steroids, essentially, where it's very much like Space Mountain. You're in space going through, but the way that the cart swivels, and because it's so modern and new, um it's very smooth, and like, just so it's less like, in like older
Herky
roller
jerky,
coasters,
and
yeah,
yeah.
you might kind of like jerk around a little bit. It's just very smooth and very, very fun. Um, and just the theming is fantastic. So the songs you can get, you can either get September by Earth, Wind and Fire, One Way or Another by Blondie, Everybody Wants to Rule the World by Tears for Fears, Conga by, it says Miami Sound Machine, but isn't Conga by um I didn't think it was that, but never mind.
Yeah, Gloria
Um,
Estefan in
yeah, Gloria Estefan. Sorry,
yeah.
yeah, that's who I
She's
was
a part
thinking
of the
of.
group.
Yes,
Yeah.
thank you, Eric. Thank you. Um, um, I Ran by Flock of Seagulls, and Disco Inferno by the Tramps.
So
So
nothing by Limp Bizkit here.
no, which you can, we'll talk about that next week on a different thing, but
Ooh.
um we got Conga our first ride on it, and then that was just pure elation. And then the second time we got I Ran by Flock of Seagulls, and each song kind of brings a different vibe. So the whole track is exactly the same, the pacing is exactly the same. But when you get something like Everybody Wants to Rule the World, it's a little bit more vibey and slower, right? Where
And
Conga is really,
melancholy, yeah.
yeah, where Conga is very upbeat, right? So even though it's the same roller coaster, each time you ride it, it's very different. So this trip, we were like, I really want to get September by Earth, Wind and Fire. So that's Nevis and I's. It was one of our wedding songs. It was our first dance song. We met in September at the film festival. It's always been kind of our a song that it's really special to us. So we were like, we really hope we get September, but you have a 20% chance of getting each song, right? We got September when we wrote it, which just added to kind of this perfect trip. Like everything we did, we were getting on rides really quickly. We were getting good placement on rides when it comes to sitting at the front, and or getting good spots. And I'll get to a finale kind of story after this, and another thing. But we got September, Road Guardians of the Galaxy. It is incredible. It's one of the all-timer rides at Disney World. It's so much fun, and I hope that they get to do more Marvel stuff. But it really just depends on what Universal's doing with that if they eventually kind of let go of the IP at Universal Studios. But I also thought it was funny that everyone reprises uh their roles except for Vin Diesel and Bradley Cooper. So like Chris Pratt, Zoe Saldana, Dave Bautista, Glenn Close, Terry Crews are all, or Terry Crews is a new character for the ride. But Bradley Cooper. So the one thing that threw me off is that Rocket just doesn't sound like Rocket. It's
He
just
sounds like a
everyone.
voice actor that would
Yeah.
be on like a
Like what
cartoon
if? Like what
series.
if or
Yeah,
something,
yeah.
right? So
Which is
that's
strange
the
because you think that the live action people would be the ones that are replaced, and the actors that do the voiceover is like, yeah, as long as you're paying me, I'll give you like 5
it
lines or
it's
something like
interesting
that.
because I guess it's because James Gunn shot a lot of the live action footage as they were shooting Guardians 3, I think. But then Bradley Cooper wouldn't have actually been on set, right? So
Too busy
maybe,
finishing Maestro.
yeah, it would have been something separate. But it's really, really incredible. And it's a must do. Like, even if you have to pay for that single lightning lane and stuff, if you
Is it a
don't get a
must do
virtual
or a
queue.
yawn do?
Oh, it is a yawn do. I love that, Eric. Um, so yeah, that was the main thing over on Epcot. And I know this episode's getting long. I'll try to kind of go through the rest of it.
It's Disney World, man. If it was
It's
Disneyland, it'd
there's
be shorter.
I love that. Avatar Flight of Passage is amazing over in Animal Kingdom. The whole Pandora land. The one thing I'll say is I wish Animal Kingdom stayed open a little bit later, because Pandora at night glows and looks really beautiful at night. But um, Animal Kingdom always closes pretty early, so unless you go kind of in the winter when the sun sets at like 4:30, you don't really get to see Pandora at night. There's a really great um quick service restaurant in Pandora. It's one of my favorite places to eat at Disney, called Santuli Canteen, or
Jake Sully can't see.
yeah, Jake Sully Canteen. Um and it's kind of Satuli Canteen at Pandora, and they kind of do these like rice bowls, and it's like the most kind of like real
Food?
food at Disney. Like, there's a lot of fried food, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's just all very theme park food, right? Like,
Especially if you're there for like a long time, right? Like if you're
yeah,
there for like a week or so and you're eating nothing but that, like if you get something that resembles something a little healthier, like I'm sure that's a welcome
there's like vegetables and
change.
rice and meat in it,
Yeah.
and it's all really good. But then still very themed to Pandora, where it looks kind of alien. Really good desserts there as well. But it's one of my favorite places to eat at Disney. So even if you do not care about Avatar, I really kind of highly suggest just going to see Pandora. And I know a lot of my family doesn't care about Avatar at all, but really love going to that land. And Flight of Passage is like, if people have gone to Disney, like Soarin' around the world, or Soarin' through California. Um, it's like that, but through Pandora, right? And it is like riding one of the banshees, and you feel it breathing, and it's one of those big like kind of IMAX screen video rides. It is very cool. It was cooler when it opened, where now things like Rise of the Resistance, Tiana's, and Cosmic Rewind, I think, are probably better rides than that. But um, if you like those types of rides like Soren, it's amazing. It's really, really cool as well. Rise of the Resistance, which I think I did talk about when I talked about going to Disney in LA. I don't know. That would have been a while ago when we talked about that, Eric. But the whole Star Wars land, like the first time I saw the Millennium Falcon, the full size Millennium Falcon, and like the theming and just immersiveness of going into Galaxy's Edge as a Star Wars fan, I think is almost overwhelming, especially if you've been a huge Star Wars fan for a long time. Like, I think it is very, very cool, and they've done such a great job with all the shops and the restaurants and things around Galaxy's Edge. You almost wish there was a little bit more, because there's just the two rides. There's Rise of the Resistance and Smuggler's Run. Smuggler's Run being the ride where you get to drive the Millennium Falcon. It's more video screen based, and you have 6 people all doing different jobs. The best ride is being the pilot, obviously, and the other ones are a little less interesting. But then Rise of the Resistance, got to be one of the coolest things I've ever experienced as well. Very different than a Cosmic Rewind, which is a roller coaster, where this is more that dark ride to the max with thrilling elements where it's both theater and theme park ride, like where the lineup is part of the experience because they bring you into these holding areas that have theater elements with the cast members playing members of the empire and or not the empire at that moment, what do they call them, the first order, in that era of Disney, coming on, and you're boarding a shuttle which then gets hijacked by the first order, and then you're brought into the space station where it's full size. It's one of the biggest, most like epic rooms I've been in, with all the kind of stormtroopers lined up, and you're looking out into space, and it's like, it is really like, even describing it isn't spoiling anything, because like when you walk out that first time, and if you're a Star Wars fan, into that first room that I'm describing right now, it is like kind of like, holy shit. And then the whole rest of the ride, I think, is really great. There's a really great moment with Kylo Ren and a lightsaber coming at you, and with the AT-ATs and ATSTs, and uh or no, the AT-ATs are the big four-legged ones, right? Or is
Yes.
that, yeah, so the AT-ATs like shooting at you, and you're going through, and there's a fun drop, and you're, with Rey and Kylo and Finn, and it's a really really well done thing. And even while you're waiting, of everyone just kind of, you're taken prisoner, in the way that they make you line up and separate you into groups, it's really really fun. It is incredible. As a Star Wars fan, you have to go on it. And then at Magic Kingdom, the last thing I want to talk about, and we had a really great trip. Like I said, we just got really lucky with like placement of where we were. Everything we wanted to do felt like it worked out perfectly, and that doesn't always happen. And one of the things, you going to Disney, you have to kind of be okay with, is that you're not going to be able to see everything, and some things aren't going to work out, right? Like, it's stressful. It's
They
like,
never do.
sometimes, no, it doesn't, and that's like any vacation, right? But just prep yourself that you're not going to be able to see everything, and some things you're going to get, it'll be too busy, or will be shut down, or whatever, and just kind of just roll with the punches. But we got really lucky with like things we were doing, and being able to ride everything we wanted to. And it helps when we did go the year before, so we didn't need to do everything again, right? So and that's not something that many people are going to do. It might be like, I'm going to Disney, and I might not be back for 10 years. I might not ever come back, or whatever, right? Because it is expensive. Um, but the one thing, there is a Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs roller coaster called Seven Dwarfs Mine Train. That is more of a kids roller coaster, but has, again, some dark ride elements to it. Um, we really love it because of the theming. It's really nice with the seven dwarfs, and the animatronics are great. The music's great, things like that. But it is kind of a mellow roller coaster for the most part. On this trip, we decided, we're like, we haven't gone on Seven Dwarfs yet. Should we go? Should we go? Is the lineup, it was shut down all day, basically, for technical reasons. It opened up later in the day, and the fireworks were happening at the time, and we were watching the fireworks from behind the castle, because if you've ever been to Disney, watching the fireworks is incredible. You should do it. But watching them at the front is overwhelming. There's so many people that are trying to watch it, and there's projections all on the castle, so everyone is standing in front of the castle, and all down that whole main street is just filled with people, right? So I'm okay with crowds at Disney, but because the parks are so big, it's kind of spread out, right? It can get very crazy in certain areas, but fireworks is always nuts. So we decided, because we'd been to Disney the year before and things like that, to watch the fireworks from behind the castle, so you can still see the fireworks, but you just don't see any of the projections and things like that. And the fireworks show goes on for quite some time. So as we were watching the fireworks, we're like, oh my God, Seven Dwarfs dropped down to like a 20-minute wait or 15-minute wait, which is usually it's one of the rides that has kind of a higher rate waiting time, because it's kid friendly. It's in the middle of Magic Kingdom. It's always got a long wait, and it was shut down that whole day. So we decided to run on it. We're like, we don't need to see the end of the fireworks. We'll just go on the roller coaster. So we line up. We're still watching some of the fireworks from the lineup. So that was kind of cool. And then as we get on the roller coaster, we couldn't have timed it more perfectly. And it was such like a nice encapsulation of, I love doing this with my family. I was there with my wife and my sister, and it is something that can kind of sound silly to other people, but we really do enjoy going to this and the escapism of it all and just having fun while we're there. That as we were riding Seven Dwarfs, we saw the finale of the fireworks happen as we were riding on the roller coaster, which is something you can't even time, right? Like it's just something that is like
Just
was
happened.
just happened at the perfect timing of lining up and getting on the coaster and going up, and as we were going over the first little bit, like the fireworks going off, and it was just one of those kind of corny magical kind of moments that happen by chance when you're there. And it's something that, as silly as it sounds, is something I will always remember with my sister and my wife going on this silly Snow White roller coaster at Disney World at this perfect timing of fireworks going off and going on this ride. So it was like, it was really wonderful. Like I really do. And there's so much more I could talk about, but and maybe we'll do this again. But it's one of those places that like I highly suggest, if you've ever thought it was like too busy or you're too old for it, or you think it's kind of silly, like if you have an affinity or a nostalgia for Disney when you were a kid, or even like the stuff that they're doing now, um try to get out there. Like I know it's expensive, and I know not everyone wants to go to, Orlando or something like that, but like I really do think like, the Florida weather, especially if you're Canadian, escaping there during the winter, try to go like in February or something like that. The crowds were decent, and escaping the cold is really great. This last time we went in August, where it was like we were melting. It was so hot. It was so hot. But I really think like if you're a movie fan and you might think it's for kids, and it might not be for you, but I think if you look at it from a technical standpoint and a storytelling standpoint and just like the impressive nature of building these immersive lands, and there's so much new stuff that they're building in the future for bringing some stuff from like the LA side over to Orlando, or even like Indiana Jones and some more kind of more adult kind of theming in certain areas. They're building a whole villains land and things like that. Like I really do think it's worth it. It's expensive, but if you can get out there even for a couple days, like flights from Canada to Orlando are not that bad. Like you can find flights for $200-300 return. And it is very expensive to actually go to the parks, but especially if you have kids, I think you guys already know this. Like that Disney is, all kids, I think, kind of dream of going. It's this magical kind of thing. But even as an adult with no kids, I think it is worthwhile. It's fun. I can't wait to go back. But for me, it's kind of, I always try to wait till there's something new. Where I get the people who want to go every day or have annual passes, or if you live in the area, it's like your local theme park and stuff like that. But if you travel out of town or from Canada, like I understand, that it's not something you can do all the time. And even me who loves it, or my sister who's like, I'm itching to go back. I'm like, I want to try to do all the Disney parks around the world because there's something different at each one. Or I've heard the ones in Japan are amazing, or the ones in some of the other Asian parks, or, Nevis is European. We've always want to go to the Paris one, which has some more Marvel stuff. And
Or the itchy and
um,
scratchy one.
yeah, well, that actually with Simpsons, you never know. Like that's leaving Universal now, so I wouldn't be surprised if Disney does something with the Simpsons. But yeah, the contract for that I think expired at Universal, so that whole Itchy and Scratchy Land and Springfield is coming down from there. I don't think they'll build a whole Simpsons land like they did
It'd be funny if they
in
just
Orlando.
transfer everything from
Yeah, they just
Universal
yeah.
over to Flyover.
I do not like that Simpsons ride, so I hope that they do something different. Um but yeah, it's a lot of fun. I really I think if you need to escape, and what I love there is like if I'm there for a week, I'm not on social media. I have no idea what's going on in the outside world, which is sometimes a bad thing, but like can be a good thing because I think everyone needs to escape once in a while. And
Disconnect.
you can disconnect and go to a resort, you can go to whatever. But for me, disconnecting in this bubble of Disney is a lot of fun because you're just supposed to be there to have fun. And I don't think of anything else. Like I'm just kind of there trying to plan on going on rides, trying to eat good, fun food and things like that. So I know a little bit long winded. I talked a lot. Eric didn't get to talk a lot here, but the one thing I will leave is some of my other favorites while I'm there. The Frozen ride is great. I love the safari at Animal Kingdom because it feels different. You just get to, ride on a Jeep and get to see some cool animals, stuff like that. It's very un-Disney and it feels like, something completely different. Uh, a hidden gem, Mickey's PhilharMagic in Magic's Kingdom. It's an older kind of movie theater kind of style, super cinemascope, ultra wide kind of immersive 3D 4DX experience kind of show, which I think people don't it's been there for a long time, but I hadn't gone on it since I was probably a kid. And I was like, man, this thing rocks. And they've added new things um from Coco, I believe, and other things. So they keep adding different Disney movies to that show. Obviously, Space Mountain's a classic. Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway, I didn't get to talk about much, but that's at Hollywood Studios, which um, bittersweet because it's a great ride and it's the only Mickey themed ride that they have at Disney, which is very strange, you'd think, but him being like the mascot. Of the entire company, but super cute. It's like basically you go to watch a Minnie and Mickey short in a movie theater, and you basically the screen blows up and you enter the cartoon, and the animation and the style of that entire ride is really fun. But it did replace the Great Movie Ride, which obviously me and you, Eric, as huge movie fans, like that ride was dated, but I also loved it because it had things like a xenomorph and like it just had like different from all different movies and movie studios. Like it just had animatronics just celebrating movies in general and movie making. So because it was at Hollywood Studios and the theming of that whole park was movie making and like a backlot and stuff like that, where I think they've removed some of
It
that
was the
stuff now.
touchstone
Kind of, yeah.
of
And
Disney World.
I kind of miss that ride, but I know not many people do. So it was just kind of a soft spot for me. Um, Expedition Everest is great, which is another roller coaster. Test Track is great. It's closed right now. Soarin' is a classic. Haunted Mansion and Jungle Cruise and Pirates, I think, are in that trio of Disney classics that maybe feel a little bit dated now, but they're like the OG kind of rides at Disney. So I think I'm nostalgic for them because of that. I think like something like Jungle Cruise, it really depends on what skipper you get. And
If
like
it's
are
The
there
Rock,
if it's The Rock, yeah. If it's DJ, and their puns and how much they bring to it.
DJ Jungle Cruise.
Yeah. Haunted Mansion. If you go to Disneyland, they do a Nightmare Before Christmas overlay of it around Halloween and Christmas time, which I think is really fun. The OG Haunted Mansion ride, it's, it is what it is. I think it's still really cute. I think
It's like the
uh,
standard, right? Like
yeah,
it's
it
what you
is. It's
expect from
like it's a
Disney
small
World.
world too, right? Like those are the ones that you should never get rid of and not really update them that much. Like they have updated Haunted Mansion with the Hatbox Ghost, thinking of Jared
Jared
Leto
Leto again. God damn it.
But it's not the Jared Leto version that they've updated. It's more just the ride version. And same with Pirates. You forget like that originated as this Disney ride that turned into this big movie franchise. Which I think is really cool. And the version at I think Disneyland's version, I like that each version of Pirates is slightly different. And I've heard the ones again in the Asia parks are wild, with really, really cool technology and stuff like that. So Rock and Roller Coaster is that Aerosmith roller coaster that I feel like we could maybe rebrand or do something different with, if I'm being honest. I
It
don't
peaked when
know.
the Polar Express came out, when
Yeah.
Aerosmith was having its resurgence.
I'd be fine. I think you could keep that roller coaster and rebrand it with another. Some people have suggested Powerline from a Goofy movie
Oh,
would
that'd
be
be good.
really fun. Obviously, Taylor Swift is the one that's been thrown around a lot, which I think would be smart on their
But that'll
behalf.
even date eventually, right? Like I think you want to probably find something that maybe that doesn't need to be rebranded like 10 to
Every
20
20
years,
years,
you
yeah.
know.
Because the Aerosmith thing is just like, "Oof, okay, we can yeah, this might we don't need this anymore." In Paris, they rebranded it to Avengers, so it's like an Iron Man kind of roller coaster
I
now
like
or something like
Powerline though. That
that.
would be good.
Powerline would be great.
Eye
I
to
think,
eye.
like,
Woo.
if you wanna keep the Disney theming, like, Powerline would be great. I think one of the biggest disappointments was the Ratatouille ride in Epcot. Like, none of my family really dug it, but it's one of the newer rides in Epcot.
You just go into a
Remy
kitchen, it's infested by rats.
That's essentially what it is, dude. You, like, get shrunken down to, like, rat size, and you kinda go through a kitchen. It's very screen-based, and the one thing I will say, I don't love screen-based rides. I just find them kind of lazy and, like, I know you have limited space sometimes, but, like, there's nothing super exciting to me of going in a ride vehicle and just, like, going in front of a screen and, like, doing, like, the kind of the rides moving as you're watching a screen. Like, I like animatronics. I like building a real it's like practical effects, right?
Yeah.
Versus special effects and, like, or visual
Or like
effects. And, like
you're walking through an art exhibit, right? With like screens and stuff like that where like there's a visual artist aspect to it, but it's not engaging in the sense of you're in a theme park, right? You want to feel like you're, you know, along for the ride.
Yeah, and I guess it can feel immersive, and I don't mind it being used sparingly in certain things. Like there are screens in this Rise of the Resistance ride and things like that, or Soarin' or Flight of Passage. That's what they're meant for. But something like this that it makes it feel like you're moving through a real space, and it just becomes nauseating a little bit. I did not really care for the Ratatouille ride, and then there's some dated rides like, Buzz Lightyear Space Ranger Spin, Spaceship Earth. We also don't care for there's a whole Toy Story land, which is great. I love Toy Story. My wife Nevis loves Toy Story Mania, which is a screen-based ride, but it's more of like a game. They're like carnival games that you play against each other, and she's super competitive. So she loves her favorite thing at Disney is Toy Story Mania. And then there's a Slinky Dog roller coaster, which if you remember like Ghoster Coaster at like Canada's Wonderland, which was Scooby-Doo themed at one point. It's like a kid's roller coaster, right? So this is like Slinky Dog. You're riding Slinky Dog through this roller coaster. It's cute. There's a what's the penguin's name from Toy Story? Um, is it just Penguin? I forget, but there's a good
Colin
animatronic of
Farrell?
him at the end. And then there's certain things that they're getting rid of, which I understand, like the dinosaur ride. Remember that movie?
Oh yeah.
Dinosaur?
They still have that?
They still have it. They just
It's
are
like
closing
early
it.
2000s, man.
They're closing it down and doing Indiana Jones for it.
Okay. No
And
one
they're
saw that
building
film, by the way.
no, no one did. It's crazy that they have this whole Dino Land USA area that they're kind of that was felt very dated, felt very empty. So they're taking that all away and doing like it's like a they're doing like an Encanto Land, Indiana Jones kind of like they're updating it,
Next,
which
you'll say
is
there's like a Titan AE land or something like that.
yeah, exactly. So I love it. It's amazing. I really it's one of the things now on my bucket list that I want to kind of try to go to every Disney park. So maybe this will be kind of a recurring um series each time I kind of go.
I'm
But
surprised that Canada
um
hasn't tried to do something with like a Disneyland of their own.
there's always been like people have said like they should I think because of the weather, dude. Like you
Yeah.
got to think like I know the Paris park gets cold during the winter, but I don't know if Paris gets like they do get snow and stuff like that, but it's not like our winters, right? So I think like if you look at where the majority, same with Japan, it gets cold during the winter and stuff too, but
So
um
it's not as lucrative
it's
year round, right?
I
Because you'd have
think
to
that's
shut
it,
down
right?
the
You'd
park.
either have to shut down or you'd have to make sure you don't have that many outdoor rides, right? Because like any roller coaster you can't ride in December. I mean, I
Yeah.
guess you
And kids
could,
aren't
but
going to
like,
want to do like a ski lodge situation, right?
I
Like,
mean, Wonderland has tried that. Their theming is very Canadiana, kind of like wilderness kind of thing. But Wilderness Lodge, also another great resort at Disney. Um, Toronto Island, people talked about too. Wonderland, I would love that, but I think it is so like the flight to Orlando, where it's warm all the time, is not that far. Like, I don't see them doing another North American park. Like,
yeah,
it
and
doesn't.
after the failed experiment of Cullen Gardens in Miniature Village,
Yeah,
it's just like if they
yeah.
can't make it, no one can.
Exactly. But yeah, it's always keep an eye on for deals and stuff like that too, because it does kind of help, and Disney does have a lot of the times for Canada residents, they have kind of deals. So if you go to disneyworld.ca/tickets right now, if you're Canadian, there is a deal right now, a special offer for Canadians that you guys can go check out, which gets you like a 4-day park ticket for like cheaper. So it's like almost like just over $100 per day, which is expensive, but it does save you off of like the normal kind of price to the parks, which is even pricier. And the more days you go, the cheaper it is, but you can use it, I think, through like September of next year. So I do appreciate that they do deals for Canadians and stuff like that specifically. And there's also ones if you're like a Disney Plus member, all these different things. So just always check out their like special offers and stuff if you want to go. And I'll put a link in the description of the episode for that as well. Yeah, had a great time. My sister's already texting me being like, we have to go back. Like, she's Jack from Lost. So we were already talking about, like, I'm like, oh, she's like, I want to go back already. And I'm like, I could probably,
Lost Land would be good.
dude, I'd be all in on that. I don't
Yeah.
think they'll ever do a Lost unless they bring Lost back, which I hope they do.
I
But
mean, Matthew Fox could just work there. He's not doing anything right now.
yeah. Uh,
You could
is
get
that actually?
tattoos there.
There's no
Like that could be one.
animatronic.
That could be one of the things. It's like you could
The
get like
Yeah,
get
Jack's
tattoos.
tattoo. Yeah.
Spend a whole episode on
It's
that.
like, wow, that animatronic of Matthew Fox looks great. It's like, oh, that's just Matthew Fox.
Yeah. It's like the
Uh,
John Travolta joke in The Simpsons. So it's like, oh, and the bartender even looks like John Travolta. Looks like.
yeah, exactly. Um, yeah, so my sister's already like wanting to go back. I want to go to Disneyland with her because she's never been to any other Disney park other than Orlando. So I think I'm planning on I want to go to Paris so bad. We're planning a trip to Japan to go to Tokyo Disney Sea and Tokyo Disneyland. Not just for that, but that will be a main thing that I make everyone go do. So yeah, I kind of want to check off and try to go to all of them now. So it's just a recent thing over the last couple years that you know I don't know, maybe it's the way everything is right now. It's just the purest form of escapism to me. It's one reason why I love movies, is like I like when I watched A Real Pain last night, and a Disney movie,
Yep.
Real Pain Land.
Oh, God.
So
That's just life in general.
I know, and then that's what I mean is like I love movies that make you feel human and real and put in someone else's shoes or feel relatable. But then I also love the purest form of escapism in movies and theme parks and stuff like that. So um, that's it on this episode for our first episode of this little travel series. We'll be back soon with another episode where we will be tackling another theme park and kind of some updates to a theme park that's coming in the next year. And then we're going to be talking about some other places around the world that film fans can go travel to. So stay tuned for that
I'm actually
as
surprised.
well.
I got to say this because I was on I was on X, for God's sakes, or Twitter. I shouldn't call it X. I want to call it Twitter still. And A24 posted that they're now selling chocolate branded products with the A24 logo. I am surprised, and maybe they have thought about it, and they haven't been able to figure out like what it would be, that they haven't done a Florida-based amusement park or like sort of center, because it feels like a lot of their movies do take place in Florida. They even have a book on it, and they could do some sort of not amusement park per se, but something that's almost
Yeah, and, like,
touristy.
why not put it in that touristy area? Because you already have movie-based parks there,
Yeah.
that it could be kind of counter programming as well to, like, some of the more kind of kid-focused
Yeah,
stuff,
and
and
obviously
then
you gotta be careful because, like, even, like, with Florida Project and Kissimmee, like, how much of it would be exploitation and,
totally.
sensitivity in terms of the stories you have, but it does feel like there's a lot of films in their catalog specifically that does take place in Florida.
Yep. I think that could be cool. I don't know. Thank you all for listening. We really do appreciate it. As Eric mentioned, he has a couple interviews coming up that we would love for you guys to check out for Better Man. Um, uh, that'll be a lot of fun. That movie's a blast. I haven't listened to those interviews yet, but I can't wait. Um, as well as on the Disney monorail, we'll also be reviewing Moana 2 coming up. So that'll be up in the next week or so. Um, and we'll be having Gladiator 2, Wicked. So we'll still have a ton of stuff before the end of the year. And then you'll get a couple more regular episodes like this talking about some travel stuff. So, Eric, thank you for listening to me go full Disney adult for an hour and 45
It was
minutes.
basically the equivalent of, like, sitting down with, friends or family that have recently traveled and watching
Yes, and
their
I showed
slideshow.
yeah, yeah, exactly. With it's only talking though,
Yeah.
no photos, nothing, anything like that. You just listen to a one-man podcast about their recent vacation. So anyways, thank you all. Please go check out. We actually just launched our Blue Sky kind of accounts. Both Eric's been on Blue Sky for a while. I recently started posting on Blue Sky, and then Untitled just launched our Blue Sky channel. So we'd love for you guys to go check that out. So if you're on Blue Sky, you can follow me at Matt Rohrbeck. Eric, you're still EM6211 there,
You know it.
right? And then it's a different handle. It's Untitled Podcast for the Untitled Movie Podcast over on Blue Sky. Please go follow our letterbox, which is Untitled_movies. And
We
then you'll
will
be
update that, we swear. We swear.
we're doing all of that coming into the new year, so
Yeah.
we will.
We'll
I
be doing the
promise.
maintenance that
That
Disney
the
World has been
yeah,
doing.
exactly. Thank you everyone, and until next time,
Bobby Boucher, our best Disney prince.
it's a small world after all.